Welcome back to One-on-One with Mr. U, of course. I'm your host, Mr. U. We're in studio with us, retired superintendent of the Dayton, Ohio Police Department and one of the leaders of the Warrior Servant Leader Platform. Pat Welsh is in the house. Pat, how are you, man? Good to have you here.
Hey, man, doing great, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate you.
Same here, sir. Same here, sir. It's customary for us to ask our guests to come in and kind of share a little bit about their background, their childhood. How'd you come up? How'd you get from where you are right now, man? Go ahead and share.
Well, the Reader's Digest version, I tell people, is I'm from an orphanage to a private tour of the White House and in the Oval Office, but that's the Reader's Digest. But so I was abandoned in an orphanage in Dublin, Ireland when I was 3 days old. My birth mother was a widow, and I lived in the orphanage until I was 16 months old, and I was adopted to the United States. And then my journey, I'm coming up on 68 years old, so it's been, the race has been a long one. And I've been a cop, I've been a lawyer, husband for 45 years, 5 kids, a couple grands. Right. And along that journey, I've been through the Valley of Death type experiences. Our youngest son died serving overseas 10 years ago, and wife had ovarian cancer, and it's been a faith journey that entire way with great highs and some pretty low lows. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's definitely a full life. That the part about you being abandoned in an orphanage, I just find that so profound, because sometimes people walk away from that even years later. And I think it's something that my wife and I see in a specific ministry that we function in. And we see it's years, decades later, and people still have residual impacts from that. Do you think that there's one for you personally because of that? Do you see something where it's like, kind of like whether you call it a daily battle, how do you want to describe it? A daily battle, maybe perhaps something that you have to kind of push back against because it's not a good mindset for you based on that? Is something like that?
It's kind of it's a 2-part story. Okay. Yes, until right before I turned 40 years old, I never would have perceived it or called it abandonment issues, but I also I did grow up with a bit of a mindset of I'm on my own. Yes, I have a mom and a dad. I have an American-born sister that they adopted when she was 3 days old, so that's all she ever knew. And I didn't even know where Ireland was at on a map until I was probably in 3rd grade. So it just didn't impact me as much. My sister had a lot of that resentment. My real mom wouldn't make me eat broccoli kind of stuff. I didn't, but I was also raised by my dad was deeply entrenched. He was a World War II veteran, D-Day +10. If you want it done right, do it yourself. And so I had that mindset about my family. Yes, this is my mom and dad, but I'm not really one of them kind of deal. Until I turned 40, and then this is completely divine intervention. My mom and dad, my wife, we'd been married 17 years. My parents were on their 50th wedding anniversary. My American sister and her husband were celebrating their 15th anniversary. And we were going to go to Ireland to celebrate all our anniversaries, because my father's heritage came from County Limerick. So I was raised on my dad's side of the family. We did a lot of Irish kind of things. Well, but we were going to go in September of 97, and in October of 96, I worked midnights, so on my regular days off, I'd keep my schedule. You couldn't go to bed at a normal time. So I was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I jumped on a chat room on the internet called Ireland, and back then they called it pound, not hashtag. And so hashtag Ireland, and I jumped on there, and I asked, there's 6-7 people. I go, anybody actually in Ireland? And Ireland was 5 hours ahead of us because we were living in Ohio at the time. And one guy said, yeah. And I go, where are you at? He goes, Dublin. I go, hey, do you know? So I typed, do you know of St. Patrick's infant guild is still on Haddington Road. And he goes, how do you know about St. Pat's? I said, well, I lived in the orphanage. And he goes, so did I. When were you there? And I said, yeah, back 57 to 59. And he goes, oh, I was there in 75. You know, the orphanage is closed. And I did know it was closed. And he goes, have you ever tried to find your birth mother? And I said, no. He goes, well, if you're interested, call this nun. And he gave me her phone number. And it was the offices. The orphanage itself was closed, but the business offices still existed.
Okay.
So I called it, and this nun answered the phone. I told her my story. She goes, send me a letter and any proof you're who you say you are, and we'll see what happens. So I did that, and in January of 97, I get up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon-ish, and I come down, and my one daughter says, Dad, some lady called, and I couldn't understand a word she said, the Irish accent, but here's her phone number. Well, it was the nun's. I recognized it was the nun's phone number. So I called it back. And she goes, I found your birth mother. You have a sister, but I can't give you their contact info. And in your letter, you did not indicate if I could give out your info. I said, oh, absolutely. And she goes, they may never contact you. And I said, no worries. I wasn't actually looking for anybody. It was just a curiosity question at 4 o'clock in the morning, talking to a guy in Dublin, Ireland. And so 2 days later, again, get up 4 o'clock in the afternoon-ish, and my daughter goes, hey, some lady called, couldn't understand a word she said, here's a number. Well, it was a different phone number, but it was the Irish International Exchange. So I called it, and my birth sister answered the phone.
Oh, boy. Wow, what was that like?
So it was, and here's the weird part. She's 9 years older than me, but she didn't know about me. And we talked for a few minutes, and then she goes, well, Mummy's, because it was 9 o'clock their time or 10 o'clock their time. She goes, Mummy's already gone to bed. Can we call you back tomorrow, and what would be a good time? So I said, yeah, sure. And she goes, 8 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock their time, 3 o'clock my time. And she goes, well, Mummy's going to be so pleased. Tomorrow is her 79th birthday. So the first time she ever got to have a conversation with her son was on her birthday. So that's a long answer to your question about prior to actually talking to her. And then we went over to Ireland in September, and my two moms got to spend 3 days together. And the healing that happened for my birth mother, the questions I had as an adoptee, because you always want to know the answer why, and you want to know your medical history, type deal. And so the healing that everybody had was, I say it's a miracle. It's in God's timing that this happened, and so anything that I felt prior to that meeting and that closure and whatnot just became a complete thing of the past. And I know a lot of people don't have that are adopted. They don't have, particularly under U.S. laws, the privacy and all that kind of stuff. It's very difficult. But don't dwell on it. It's God has you where you're at for a reason. And except that should be enough.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. You've dealt with a lot of life. So I want to get into some of your career moves because those things often shape us. So I definitely want to get into that a little bit. Was there ever a storm of life or a life storm, if you will, that you question how you're going to get through
it? Professionally, career-wise, I was a DA who became a cop. I did it backwards. And after 4 years of prosecuting cases, I hated what I was doing. And I wouldn't call it a storm, but it was definitely a disturbance. Let's call it that. And my wife, I came home one evening because I was doing the prosecutor, and then I had a private practice on the side. And came home. I was 28 years old. And she says, man, you're always, in a bad mood when you come home. What do you want to really do? And I told her I wanted to be in law enforcement since I was 8 or 9 years old. And she goes, then go do it. So I had her support. And so I made that transition professionally, and for the next 26 years, that's what I did. There were a lot of times, Dayton, Ohio was very violent. We were the seventh most violent city per capita during my career. Compton, California was number 9. I've been on hundreds of homicides, just all sorts of stuff, and saw things and had to deal with things no human being should have to do. And there were periods during that time where I just wanted to shut down and be left alone. And that affected my faith life, that affected our family life. But we weathered through it. My wife stuck, 45 years we've been married. She stuck through all that. But the biggest storm would be when our son died. But it was faith, and I'm a devout practicing Roman Catholic. I'm a Christian. I have a 4-year biblical studies program under my belt. My wife and I went through it together, and it was during this time when Kevin died. And that is what it was: faith and community and consistency that got us through that.
I love that, man. That's a powerful story. Yeah, I was reading it. We were talking about it offline in regards to your career in law enforcement. This is kind of a 2-part question, I guess. First part, what did being on the front lines in law enforcement, especially in one of the most dangerous cities in the world at that time, what did that teach you? And then, I guess on the other hand, I kind of wonder about, how do you handle now all the things that you've seen? Because it's easy to put it into a memory box, if you will, and just forget about it. But what's the impact now from all that you've seen, all of the homicide, all of the violence? You had to be in Ohio to still kind of connect with those things. So kind of a 2-part question. What did you learn most or bigger takeaway from being on the front lines? And then how do you handle the weight of all the things that you've seen in that time, even though it was years ago?
Yeah. 2-part answer. One, I learned and it was not instantaneous. This is over a period of years. I learned patience. I learned it's not personal. I dealt with situations I had to deal with. It wasn't Pat Welsh they hated. It was the uniform. It's what I represented at times. So that not to take things personally. And because one of the biggest dangers of being a cop is you develop a us versus them mindset. And that's not healthy. And the other thing I learned is, in a very brutal way, is there are a ton of people that out there. I call them the least, the last, and the lost. There's so much tragedy. There's so much things that can drive people to depression and hate and all that kind of stuff. And so it gave me the ability to start developing empathy and compassion that I didn't have when I first became a cop. So that was a journey. With respect to life after law enforcement, now I've been retired 13 years, and how do I deal with? Because I've been on over 300 murder scenes in my career, and that doesn't count everything else I dealt with. In hindsight, this is going to sound like a really weird answer. I think God prepared me for that career when I was in 2nd grade, and I had a traumatic brain injury. Wow. And if you're Catholic, we called it last rites. It's really called the anointing of the sick. But I was in a coma. They didn't know if I was going to live, die. And even if I did come out of it, what was it going to be? Kind of life would I have? Well, one of the things of having that TBI and a long-term consequence of it is I do not have the ability to visualize and remember. I can't picture events from the past. So I can remember facts and circumstances, and academically I did really well. I mean, I came out of that and went to third grade, skipped fourth grade, but it's a blessing and a curse in a way, is I literally cannot picture past events. Wow. So I haven't suffered with PTSD mostly because I can't play it over in my mind like a video. And I think that's a blessing. The curse is I can't replay, my wedding day, my kids' births, those kinds of things. I remember facts, and I can tell the stories about a lot of things. I wrote a book called, Warrior Servant Leader, Life Behind the Badge. I remember all the events, I just can't picture them. And part of PSTD for a lot of people is you can't shut off the video. I can't turn it on. So it's kind of different.
No, that's definitely different. Definitely. I want to get into some of your thoughts on law enforcement. This would be really interesting for us to touch on that. But before we do that, I want to just ask, because to work in the places that you've worked, to do the heavy lifting you've done, how do you personally avoid not being in survival mode? Because it seems like it's a simple transition. You know what? You got all those hard things. That the world's coming against you. How do you not? How do you live and not be in survival mode all the time? How are you able to do that?
I did. As a cop, I did until I was 20 plus years into my career. So this is late in my career where I learned a lesson. Excuse me. I was always in survival mode as a cop because we had to live in the city. We had mandatory residency. So we weren't allowed to live, in a suburb. So I went everywhere with my gun, off duty. I took my gun to church, type deal. And this is before school shooters and all, a lot of that other stuff. Until one day where I had a wake up moment, if you will. Earlier in my career, I took a call at a house of a returned runaway, a 12-year-old young African American male, didn't come home from school, and his parents reported him missing. And a different officer took that call in the afternoon at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I got the call to go to the house because the kid came back. So I'm thinking, this is a 2-minute call. I confirm he's there. He's not hurt. If he runs away again, call us. And so I get the information from the family, and I'm getting ready to leave, and Mom says, we're at our wit's end. We don't know what to do. Will you talk to our son? And I said, yeah. What am I going to, I was a 30-something-year-old, white guy. What am I going to tell a 12-year-old black kid growing up in this neighborhood that's running with gangbangers and whatnot that's going to make a difference? But I talked to him anyway. Less than 5 minutes. He never even made eye contact with me. And I talked to him like a parent, not a cop, and I left. 18 years later, I'm standing in line at Kroger's, checking out, and it's, I'm in the city. I got my gun on, off duty. I got my Uncle Mike's ankle holster on, and a little old lady next to me, and then some other people behind that. And this voice behind this old lady goes, "Hey, Welsh, is that you?" And I'm like, okay, it's either got to be a cop or not a cop, because nobody calls me by my last name. I turn and look, and it's about 6'4", I figured 30-ish-year-old black male, and I immediately went to flashing red, What am I going to do if he gets froggy? If he follows me out to the parking lot? All this, and I'm racking my brain. What did I arrest him for? And so I was polite, professional. I turned to him. I go, "Yes, sir." He goes, "You probably don't remember me." I said, "No, sir, I don't." He goes, "When I was 12 years old, you came to my house because I didn't come home from school. I just want to tell you, I graduated from college. I'm married, and I have 2 daughters, and I want to say thank you." And I went, oh my God, who's the south end of a northbound horse right now? That all these years, I always treated and suspected everybody of being a threat to me, because of what I did for a living. And that was my way. That changed my attitude. Now, did I still carry my gun everywhere I went? Absolutely. But I didn't look at people as automatically, hey, they're a threat, or, I'm not in green level. I'm always yellow, ready to shoot flashing red. And that changed my attitude.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Why do you think people hate the police?
Because we are complicit, the police are complicit in developing this us versus them mindset between the community and law enforcement. Equally complicit is the media, the politicians, and the community, that we have just all become accustomed to, that the police go, you're not one of us, and the community goes, you're not one of us. And so we don't have connection and relationships.
Okay. If you had to put a percentage on each of those areas, the media, the community, the communities, and the police, what are the percentages you put as far as the blame, if you will, out of 100%?
Out of 100%? 50%. 50% on the cops and 50% on the media.
The community gets zero?
The community forms their opinion of law enforcement based on the 30-second videos they see on the news, or the politicians, is they don't, in today's world, if it's on TV, if it's on the internet, it must be true type deal. And nobody ever shows, rarely, all the incredible good things cops are doing on the job, because the vast majority of police officers are not running from call in the United States, are not running from call to call to call like that. The big urban environments, yes, but even that, like, do you know how Muhammad Ali got started in boxing?
I feel like I heard the story, but go ahead and share. I want to plug it.
No, it's a uniformed police officer in Louisville, Kentucky, who was part of the Police Athletic League, which is off duty. You don't get paid for it. It's 100% volunteer. Knew Cassius Clay, that was his name, as a 9-year-old, and knew where he would end up if he continued in the life that he was being exposed to as a 9-year-old in Louisville, Kentucky, and invited him to join the Police Athletic League boxing program. And then Paul Harvey, you know the rest of the story. But nobody knows that unless a cop that was, and I was involved in the Police Athletic League, knows that story and shares it. And I blame the police for not doing a better job of sharing what they do that positively impacts the community on and off duty. And I blame the media for not seeking out those stories and sharing them so that we can build community between us, the protectors, and those who, our job is to protect you from being a victim. And you hate us for coming. Yeah, how many unsolved cases, homicides and whatnot, are out there because people that know what happened hate the police so much they would rather not cooperate than to help solve a murder and bring closure to a family that lost a loved one.
You'd want that if it was you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Trust me on that one. So what's your personal view of law enforcement?
I think law enforcement, they are unsung warrior servants. That they are, the warrior in them is that they stand up, they show up, and they defend what they believe. And they believe in protecting their community. They believe in holding criminals accountable, and they do it. And it's a very, very difficult position to be in. and most people do not see cops as servants, and I do, having done it for over 26 years, is a servant is a person that puts the wants and needs of others before their own. And you name one other group of people in this world other than the military that will run towards gunfire, who will, firefighters, yeah, they'll run into a burning building, but they got protective gear on. I love them to death, but I know tons of cops who have run into burning buildings, and they have no protective gear on to try and save someone. And they have that mindset, but they go through a career that just keeps pounding and beating them up, and they lose faith in themselves, and they lose faith in the community.
Wow. Several more questions I want to try to get to before our time runs out, which is really close to happening now, but this is a great conversation. So if I understand right, Pat, you're training policemen now, right? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
How did that process change because of the climate that we're in? Are you doing something differently because of today's climate?
No. I'm very authentic, which means I'm very blunt when I talk to cops. And I'll tell you what, the best evaluation I ever got back, written evaluation, was because it was about leadership and changing the culture of law enforcement. And the feedback was, thank you for sharing what you did. You just gave me the tools to save my marriage. So I approach training cops in a holistic way. It's not about just being a cop. It's being a better spouse, being a better parent, being a better person, having a faith life. If you don't have one, why not? Kind of deal. And that evaluation told me, okay, I'm not just training cops. I'm training the whole person.
That's an excellent approach to this, because I think that they could use that kind of holistic insights. That's really good. You talk a lot about warrior, servant, leader. We should know what the words mean, but what exactly is that to you, and what are you doing surrounding that?
Well, the warrior, you stand up, show up, and defend what you believe. Take a parent. You do that for your family and your kids. A servant is someone who simply puts the wants and needs of others before themselves. Look at Mother Teresa, now St. Teresa of Calcutta. And a leader is simply a person of positive impact and influence in the lives of others, like that 12-year-old kid. That was a leadership moment for me. I didn't see it as that, as I'm going through it, but as I look back and I've learned and grown in my own development, that's what a leader does. They treat everybody and everything as a positive opportunity to impact and influence that person.
I love it. In your training of police officers, I'm sure that there's some component that it just simply has to be where you're dealing with that us against them attitude, and try to break that wall down, that barrier, if you will. How are you doing that? And how can we do that on our end?
Well, the quickest way for you to do it on your end is to get this book. It's called Danger, Duty, and Disillusion, A World View of the LAPD. And it breaks down, it's the best book ever written of looking at the psychology of an officer and why they develop from that idealism of I want to give back to the community to I hate everybody. So read that book. I did, 1999. It changed my life. And then I use that as a tool in very practical scenario-based training to help change your mindset as a cop.
I got the link in the live chat for all you guys that are listening or watching the show. It's on Amazon, Danger, Duty, and Dissolution. I have it in the chat. You guys can find it there. And I'll do my best to add it to the show notes if I can also. Just a few more questions, Pat, and then I'll get us out of here. So you talk a lot about leadership and the importance of that to you. What's your qualifications for somebody who is called to or aspires to be a leader? Because we see a lot of bad examples of that. And I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think qualifies somebody to be a leader.
You have to sit down and really do that self-analysis and ask yourself a couple of questions. And if you aspire to be a leader, I think one of the most important questions you have to honestly answer is why? Why do you want to be a leader? And what's your definition of a leader? If you go, well, I want to be a leader because I want to be a police chief. Okay, that's positional leadership, and that's not, you're not a real leader. What is your definition of a leader, and why do you want to do that? And then here's the second question: what's your life sentence? And people are looking, and this is the last thing I do with every training thing I do with cops. Every one of us has a life sentence, and that sentence is going to be the one sentence people share at your funeral about you. They'll say, "Oh, well, Pat, Pat had a great smile," or they'll say something. Well, that's how they remember you. What do you want them to say? What do you say is your life sentence? And if you ask me, my life sentence is, I want people at my funeral to say, Pat impacted my life. And it's that simple. And then every day, how am I not living out that life sentence? What am I doing that's not impactful in a positive way? And then that keeps you focused, and it gives you purpose.
Well done. Well done. Well, personally, Pat, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for coming here and sharing so much of your life with our listeners and our audience. For those of you who are watching and listening for the first time, you don't know how it goes, but this is a live episode, so there's going to be, social media already has this episode going right now. It's still live. The others will be shared in clips within the hour, and on all the listening platforms. Also within the hour, you can get the full episode with Pat and all the things that he's sharing about. Final question I want to ask you, then I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to share about your community newsletter, which the link to is already on the screen right now. For those that are listening, you can find Pat Welsh, WELSH, on LinkedIn. His Warrior Servant Leader community newsletter. For those that are watching, you can see it on the screen right now. It's also in the show notes and as well in the live chat. So last question, we ask this for all of our guests that come through. It's called the CMV question. It's theoretical, not to diminish your talents and your abilities and your skill set and all you've done. You've done great things over the years. We're really erasing it all right now. Where do you think Pat Welsh is today? This is a place you haven't been, probably haven't touched it. Maybe you haven't even thought about it much over the years. What do you think you're doing today? Most likely.
I'd be a Roman Catholic priest.
What?
Yeah. If in hindsight, yes, that I would be a Roman Catholic priest.
All right. So I always had this follow-up question because sometimes it warrants that. So is there any chance it's going to happen now?
Nope. They have an age limit. Plus, I'm married.
Oh wow! Okay, I didn't know about both of those. That's
yeah,
man. Thank you for being here, brother. I want to give you a couple of minutes to kind of share with the people. You can share about the newsletter and who you serve, or you can just share from what you've been sharing with us today. Maybe some pearls of wisdom, some encouragement for the listeners and the viewers. You got 2 minutes, man. They are yours, man. Go for it.
Oh man, it's real simple. Here's basic message. A, you're not alone. Seek out community, seek out people that you want to be mentored by, that you aspire to be, and fill your life with the type of people you want to be. That's one thing. And then the last thing, this is on my challenge coin. I actually had this laminated and was on my wall or on my door to my office, so the folks that worked with me or worked for me knew how I was going to always conduct myself. This is my moral compass, if you will, and it's very scripturally based. I'm not going to give you all the scriptures that support it, but here's the bottom line. Always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. And if you do that, no matter what storms you face in life or what heights you rise to, that will keep you focused, and it will also keep you humble. That it takes a lot of courage and a lot of humility to always try to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons.
Thank you very much for coming here and sharing your life, man. Please give our best to your family, man. But this has been fantastic. You can find Pat Welsh in his community newsletter, Warrior Servant Leader, on LinkedIn. Of course, the clip from the episode will be heavily placed there as well as every listening platform. Wherever you get your podcast, it'll be up within the hour. Pat, thank you again for jumping on here and sharing some of your life with us, man. It's been a blessing, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you too, man.
Thank you, sir. That's Pat. I'm Mr. U. We're out of here. Have a great day. Thanks again for watching and listening to One on One with Mr.